Whether your beer is in a bottle, can, or glass, kick back and relax. It's better on draft.
Hello and welcome to Better on Draft, episode 382. My name is Rob, and with me today is Wendy. Hi, Wendy. What are you drinking?
Today I am drinking a Schlafly oatmeal stout, but I have to tell you about this new glass that I got. I know we're going to talk about all things stout, and I can't wait. But this is honestly the best Christmas present I have ever seen for a beer person, especially a beer person that loves trivia. It says cheers to your knowledge in beers, but there's a QR code on there that you can scan to get daily beer facts, which I thought was pretty cool. I just wanted to share that real quick because it was the coolest present I got this year.
That's pretty neat. An interactive beer glass.
Yep.
For myself, I am drinking a Schlafly coffee stout. How about that? And with us today is Jared Williamson. Hey, Jared, can you introduce yourself?
Hello. I'm Jared Williamson. I'm lead brewer here at Schlafly Beer. I've been with the company for 14 and a half years. Basically been working in craft beer since I turned 21, and was at another brewery before that. And I too am drinking coffee stout.
How about that? So Jared, you are here with us from Schlafly, and I have to just go back deep into the recesses of my mind of my early craft beer experiences. And Schlafly was one of those breweries. I'm in Indianapolis. It was one of those breweries where you distributed enough and we got your beer. Probably 15 years ago, you had a Biere de Gard that my drinking group absolutely loved. My drinking group being me, my wife, and our friends. And then I guess you stopped making it, but we didn't know that. We just noticed it stopped showing up in liquor stores, but we kept asking and it kept showing up. They kept finding more bottles of it until eventually they came back and said there are no more bottles of this. But I saw that it's back, or I thought I saw it back.
Well, so we used to have a bottle conditioned Belgian beer series that had like triple and quad, Biere de Gard, Grand Cru, and we haven't done Biere de Gard, but we did do triple and quad this year just for draft at the pubs. The 750 program, kind of as large format stuff started to fade away. It kind of faded away as well. But there are, we're a 34-year-old brewery. We've got a deep archive of beers that everybody loves and wants to see, and we only have so many spots every year. But yeah, I haven't had a Biere de Gard shout in a while, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the 750s were the format that I remember it in, and I've seen some of those things come back other places in the smaller, like the 12-ounce bottles, and then as 4-packs. Anyway, if that puts a bug in your ear as a way to get that back out here.
I'm always interested in what people would love to see kind of come back. Because there are, like I said, there's so many beers and such a history with this company that it's funny. People forget about beers, and then other people, it's the best beer they ever had. And, we just trying to balance moving forward, but also like maintaining the classics and also the kind of rare, one-offs and stuff. So
you said some things off the top. So to kind of get things started and let Wendy get in there after this, but you've been brewing for Schlafly for 14 and a half years. You said you've been brewing for 20 since you were 21. Can you tell us about like how that started, how you got into it?
Yeah, so I grew up in southern Indiana, down by Louisville, Kentucky, and I used to work for the New Albanian Brewing Company. And I was there when they first added on the brewing facility to the existing building. and kind of worked underneath the original brewer that kind of came with the equipment from another small brewery that had existed and then folded back in the mid 90s. So around 2000, New Albanian started brewing, in a little 4-barrel system. And that's where I got my foot first kind of in the door. Learned how to clean kegs and just kind of went from there. And by the time I left New Albanian, we had grown to the point that we had opened the second facility, had gotten into distribution, all that fun stuff. But that was really kind of where I cut my teeth, and for those that know or don't know, that brewery and that beer bar were kind of, well, in the late 90s, it was one of the highest respected beer bars kind of in the Midwest, Richo's, Public House and stuff. So I grew up around all these amazing import beers, all these styles that were harder to find, in the States maybe at that time. But as a brewer there, we had to figure out how to brew styles to fit in amongst all these like world-class, offerings. So it was like a very atypical, brewing upbringing where it was like, okay, let's fuse ideas together and come up with new things and push the envelope. It wasn't like we had to brew a flagship and, like kind of, figure out stuff. We probably did that for 5 or 6 years before we really got into distribution there. But yeah, it was a very fun and educational place to grow up. We had all these beautiful beers from Europe, some of the very aggressive hop forward beers from the US at the time. Three Floyds was really early in the game there. Rogue, rest in peace. The list can go on and on. Sierra Nevadas, all that stuff. So it was like I got exposed at a very young age to world-class beers, and it just really, between the artistic side of things and crafting and creating things, and then also the hands-on and the scientific nature of things, like it just I always joked if they would have had like intro to brewing in 9th grade, I would have probably saved myself a few years, but it just like everything clicked for me. And I never really looked back. I was just like, I found my thing, like this is it. This resonates. And then that ultimately led me to St. Louis and Schlafly Beer. And that's a whole other fun story too. But I don't know. I saw most of your podcasts run about an hour. So like,
Right. Wendy, you're on mute.
Of course I am.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't be at least one show without one of us doing it.
Yep.
I was saying we like fun stories.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll try to do the Cliff Notes version of it. So when I worked at New Albanian, we had a guy that worked in sales that had previously worked for Schlafly. And Schlafly at the time was having an annual festival called the Repeal of Prohibition Fest, where they would bring in out-of-state brewers to come in, pour their beers, hang out for the weekend, and, classic beer fest stuff. So 2008 was Indiana breweries. So it was New Albanian, Three Floyds, Bruges, and Mad Anthony. We were so I went to came to St. Louis to work a beer festival and ended up meeting my future wife, who happened to work at Schlafly Beer at the time. And one thing led to another. She moved to Southern Indiana for a little while, and then a job opened up back here. And, things just kind of fell perfectly into place. And we ended up, what I've learned is you can take the St. Louis girl out of St. Louis, but you're going to come back. And it's, it's a story old as time. I'm not the only one with that story. But yeah, so that led to me joining Schlafly Beer 14 and a half years ago. And funny little side story, at that beer festival, we had a very fancy New Albanian banner at the time, and there was a off-duty police officer from Maplewood, Missouri, where I live now, who offered me immunity for life if I gave him our fancy banner. And I was like, when am I ever going to be back in Maplewood? And now I live there.
And you missed your opportunity to commit crime.
Right. But
and
yeah,
for
so
life, man.
yeah, so right. Which I was like, I'm sure that you, Mr. Off-Duty Officer in a kilt, drunk at a festival, can definitely offer me that.
Right.
Have the power to make that happen.
Yeah, but that's kind of the fun backstory of how I went from New Albanian to Schlafly beer, and so.
Well, that was definitely a fun story. I love happy endings like that. So let's talk a little bit about your stouts.
Yes, absolutely. So I know it's stout season, and we make oatmeal stout year round, and we have it's one of the originals. And it's been in distribution the entire time that I've been with the company. I remember when Schlafly first came into Indiana. And it was, pale ale and hef, and I think I remember coffee stout and oatmeal stout and maybe the APA. And we actually hosted Schlafly when they launched into Indiana at New Albanian. So I met, Dan Kottman and Stephen Hale, some of the old heads, the old original guys of the company, ages before I even came to St. Louis to, be at one of their events. But yeah, oatmeal stout's always kind of one of the OGs. We brew it year round. It's classic, very English oatmeal stout, very robust, roasted barley notes, enough IBUs to, ground everything, and then a little bit of Golding hops, in the whirlpool to give it, a little bit of character, but it's a beer about the malts. And then over the years, oatmeal stout started to become the basis for experimentation. And some of the local coffee roasters used to come and hang out and have happy hours upstairs here at the tap room. And one day, one of them decided to make a cold toddy and bring that in, and they started messing around at the bar. And lo and behold, they were like, whoa, coffee stout, and it was kind of really born out of, some people hanging out at happy hour. But again, it's been a core seasonal for us for as long as I've been with the company, and, probably pushing 20 plus years now. Where coffee stout is just, every fall. I know our staff looks forward to it. I know our fan base looks forward to it. We had explored trying to make coffee stout a year-round beer probably a decade ago or so. And we went down that rabbit hole of like, what would it look like if oatmeal stout got pulled away and coffee stout went year-round? But the truth of the matter was oatmeal stout was just such a steady, seller, of case equivalents every month. And then when coffee stout and stout season really hit, oatmeal stout numbers also went up as coffee stout numbers went up. So it wasn't like they were, competing with each other. So ultimately, some of us tried internally very, very hard to get coffee stout year round. And then ultimately we've kept it in that seasonal spot, and it gets the seasonal hype. People get excited. It's fall. It's getting colder out. I need some caffeine with my, 5.5 or 5.7% alcohol and stuff. But yeah, so they're very. They started out very similar, and they still are. But over the years, we've kind of adapted coffee stout to better showcase the coffee. So we brought down the roast character a little bit. We took away the whirlpool hops, things like that, just to really accentuate the coffee character.
So it's no longer an oatmeal stout with coffee in it.
Yeah, I mean, there's still oat, there's still oats, there's still roasted barley. It's a similar grist between the two, but we did tweak it a bit just to let those coffee notes kind of take center stage. But there is a lot of kind of old lore that it's exactly the same. We just add coffee to it, and that used to be true, but over the years, that's kind of changed a little bit.
Right. Are you working with a particular roaster or kind of a blend or?
So traditionally, we use a French roast for this, and we do a toddy process. And over the years, Caldy's, which is a local roaster here in St. Louis, they were the first ones, and we've worked with some other roasters on some other smaller projects here and there, tap room kind of one-offs or this and that. But for the most part, like they've been they're kind of like the Schlafly of St. Louis coffee, like they've been around for decades. Now there's, I don't even know how many coffee roasters there are in St. Louis nowadays, probably 3 or 4 dozen, if off the top of my head. There's a lot, a lot of small guys and stuff. And given our size and distribution and the volume of coffee stout we still produce, we kind of need another producer that can, deliver kind of larger quantities. So they've kind of been our main partner over the years. Yep.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Let's talk about the locations, because I know we have a lot of people that like to travel that listen
Sure.
to our show. So tell us a little bit about going to visit Schlafly.
Sure. So I am, in the cellar downstairs underneath the historic Schlafly tap room here in what was once kind of known as like downtown West or Midtown. Nowadays, we are right across the street from our Major League Soccer team stadium. We joke that we played the long game for 30 years, waiting for the stadium to be built. So we're very close. We're only 2 miles from the Arch. We're only a mile from Enterprise Center, where like the Blues play hockey. The Cardinals Busch Stadium is just a little bit past that. We're really close to Union Station, which is our historic, kind of train yard and hotel and all that stuff.
How about City Museum?
Yep, and City Museum, that's a great shout. We're about 3 or 4 blocks, easy walking distance from there. And then quick aside, the Schlafly Taproom building, if you are familiar with the movie Escape from New York, that was actually filmed here in St. Louis. And you can see the taproom building in the background of a few of the shots, like kind of after Snake Plissken, like the plane gets shot down and there's, he's like running past some buildings and it's like, that's the taproom, and it's before Schlafly had taken over the building in the mid 80s. So 1991, December 26th was the opening date for the Schlafly taproom. Fast forward to 2003, and we opened our second location, which is in Maplewood, about 7 miles here as the crow flies. Also where I live with my wife that I met because of Schlafly beer. And Bottle Works is our main production facility. It is all this packaged beer and draft beer that you see out in the 17 states that we distribute to now. That's produced over at Bottle Works. The tap room nowadays is more of our kind of R&D testing brewery, and then also like our barrel aged, our sour program. I joke that Bottle Works is where we make the money juice that pays the bills and funds the fund, and the tap room is where I oversee the fund juice and the smaller projects and stuff. And then we also have our little pilot system here at tap room, which is where a lot of our projects will start on our 20-gallon system and then scale their way up and eventually graduate to the 15-barrel system here, and then eventually potentially graduate over to Bottle Works for larger production and stuff. Both locations have restaurants, full restaurants, and very different. The tap room is a historic old brick building, built in 1904. Bottle Works is a old Kroger building that had been, turned into a production facility. You got shipping docks, you got a big parking lot. And what's really cool about the history of this company, especially, is when they came to the tap room in the early 90s, this neighborhood was kind of run down. I mean, they shot Escape from New York in this neighborhood because it looked like a blighted, apocalyptic, There had been some massive fires like back in the 60s in this neighborhood, and there was a lot of buildings that had kind of been damaged and not, fixed for a few decades. And when they took over the tap room, there was even newspaper articles joking about how this wasn't going to last a year. This is Anheuser-Busch's town. This is AB land, and we're still here. So nowadays, not a whole lot of production over here. The majority of the production over at Bottle Works, both have very different vibes, but at the same time, Maplewood is a very walkable neighborhood. There's lots of other shops and eateries and stuff to do. And Midtown, downtown West, now with the soccer stadium, home match days, there's 30,000 people down here in the neighborhood, and we close down streets and have big, pre-match parties with the local supporters groups. And, it's really taken on a life of its own down here in those terms. And we've really seen a lot more investment over the years. There's a lot more other establishments, and then other just like condos and apartments, and a lot of stuff like being built up around the tap room now. So it's really cool to kind of see the growth and the potential, as St. Louis and downtown West kind of, goes through this rebirth of sorts.
I'm pretty sure that I've been to both locations, but I do remember that the Bottle Works location really stuck out to me just because of the patio.
Yes.
It was just a gorgeous patio, and just the whole setup was very friendly for anybody who was going there. Whether you were going with your family or you were going on a date or you were going with a group of friends, it really just worked for everybody because of the way it was set up.
Yeah. We when I first started, they had the outdoor pad, and they would put up like a seasonal tent, to have outdoor seating. And then probably about 10 years ago or so, they decided to build that permanent structure, which is probably what you experienced. And it's just this gorgeous, mix of wood and iron, and there's space heaters built into it and fans, and it's very much built to be we've got walls, we can enclose it. It's very much like a 4-season kind of experience. And St. Louis winters, today it's 65, yesterday it was 70. I think Sunday it's going to be 20. So we're very Midwest winter here, so you never know what you're going to get. But yeah, Bottle Works has definitely it's a family-friendly neighborhood, and like you said, it can accommodate all kinds of different things. We've got private event spaces at both pubs. So especially here at the tap room, we host a lot of wedding receptions, weddings themselves, celebrations of life, anniversary parties, you name it, corporate stuff. And then Bottle Works used to have a bigger private event space, but that kind of got shrunk as production needed more storage space over there. And that's always kind of been a bit of an internal battle of, the pub and private events wanting their space and the brewery needing more space. And, ultimately the brewery won out on that one. But
I was gonna say, kind of need the brewery for all the other stuff to work.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's still Schlafly beer,
I think it was
but
Elm
yeah,
Street in Muncie that they bought the building next door and
yeah,
moved out to
yeah,
there.
yeah. Uh, but yeah, both places have their own unique character to them. The tap room's obviously a very historic building. I mean, it's on the National Registry. This was one of the first places that some of the suffragette, ladies groups in St. Louis would meet here. There's like a plaque that they just added a few years ago outside. This was a printing company here at the tap room, the J Swift printing company for a long number of years. So these buildings held big printing presses and, what were corporate offices, back in that era. But yeah, there's just, and I mean, Bottle Works history is a little, not as sexy. It's used to be a Kroger, but at the same time, they both locations, when they opened in the neighborhoods that they are in, they were kind of a turning point for those neighborhoods. And Maplewood now, on a weekend night, I mean, there's always stuff going on. There's always people wandering around. There's, a lot of people that live within walking distance. You see a lot of people out and about. And we're hoping that downtown West, as it continues to evolve, will also turn into a modern, much more. I mean, there are residents in this area now, but like right now, there's probably, I think, a couple thousand new units that are proposed or being built currently. So we could see, a return to more, urban, densely populated kind of stuff down here. So that's really exciting and cool to see.
So does that mean that the brewery does a lot of work within their communities that they're in?
Yes. It's ebbed and flowed over the years. At certain points, like Bottle Works was home to one of the weekly farmers markets, that eventually kind of outgrew the Bottle Works footprint and moved on. But there's longstanding relationships like that. Obviously, here in the downtown West, Midtown kind of neighborhood, we've been kind of a pillar for a long time. So, I mean, just yesterday, there was a guy who popped in here who's trying to open a new restaurant about a block away in a spot. It was just trying to get signatures for, liquor license stuff. And, we're always very welcoming to new places, especially around the tap room, trying to make it happen along with us. There's a cidery a couple blocks away now. There's another brewery that's been getting a lot of love in the last year, Blue Jay. That's just a couple of blocks away. So, over the years, we've definitely, it's the core principles of this company as it was founded were make good beer, throw fun parties, build community, and that, is still, I mean, over the decades, we've obviously grown to the point that we're distributing, like I said earlier, I think we're in 17 states now. So that's a big part of the business. But at the end of the day, we're a St. Louis company in St. Louis neighborhoods serving St. Louisans, and then also guests that come in from out of town too. So.
I think that a wonderful day would be going to the City Museum and then heading to Schlafly afterward.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's before, the first couple of times I came to St. Louis for beer stuff, there was a festival called Microfest here in town. And I remember coming in town for that when I was still with New Albanian. And we had dinner at the tap room and we went to City Museum. and we're there until they basically, like kick you out at whatever, 11 or midnight. And yeah,
One
it was
more
a
time
blast.
down the slide, and then you got to go.
Yeah. I was like, how do they clear that building at the end of the night? Like so many nooks and crannies. But yeah, I mean, that was my first experience, even before I really knew any of the staff or, had met Kelsey, my wife and stuff. And it was just like, I was like, okay. I was like, St. Louis pretty cool, The food was great. The beers were solid. City Museum is City Museum. And yeah, we did that for a couple of years before we got invited to repeal. And then my whole world kind of turned, so to speak.
If people aren't familiar with City Museum, it's this gigantic, basically playground. It's like an industrial art exhibit that you get to crawl around in, and they've got a huge multi-story slide that they used to deliver shoes from down, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and they've added to it the rooftop. There's like a Ferris wheel now, and there's like plane fuselages, and there's just like lots of different like stuff that would have been in commercial waste that they repurposed. Museum is like not the right title for it. I mean, going there myself the first time, I was like, City Museum, why is everyone hyped about this? And then I walked in, and I was like, oh, this is not a museum. This is like a interactive like art project, where I can climb on things and crawl through things and slide down things, and it's indoor, it's outdoor.
There is a bar indoor and a bar outdoor.
Yeah. It's family friendly and also not family friendly.
You will leave wondering how much the insurance is on that place and how they are able to operate.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's another one of those like St. Louis institutions. It's been around for a long time. It's fairly well known. I mean, I know people that come in town specifically to go to City Museum, and have those experiences now with their kids that they had when they were younger, kind of thing.
I'll have to give that a visit next time I'm there.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I did a weekend trip with my friends from high school. This was a few years ago. It was before COVID. We stayed down by, I want to say it's Square One Brewing. I think that was it.
Yeah, Lafayette Square. Yeah.
Yeah. And then one of the big outings was going to City Museum for the evening. We just had so much fun.
Yeah, it's definitely, if you've never been, I can't recommend it enough. But it's also one of those, like, it's kind of like the Arch for like people that live here. It's like, if you live here, you only go to the Arch when like people come in town and they're like, I want to go to the Arch. And you're like, okay. City Museum's probably more fun, and it's cool to be up in the Arch, but once you've done it, you're kind of like, all right. But City Museum, I swear every time I've been there, last time I was there was for a wedding reception, and there were parts of the building that I'd never seen or explored, and like it's just cool. It's like every time you go, it's like you're peeling back another layer of the onion and experiencing something that you didn't know existed. So. Yeah, it's a great place. Yeah.
Another beer, to get back to beer.
Sorry, back to beer.
That I look forward to from you guys every year. It's got a bit of a story behind it. Currently, my Discord group does a drinking project every month, and this month being January, we're doing Wet January, which is 10% and higher ABV beers. This one doesn't qualify, but
yeah,
we got to fight back against Dry January and all that. But February, we drink the alphabet. It's all the letters of the alphabet plus numbers and symbols. That makes 28. And I always look forward to seeing Zwickel out there, which is either you or Urban Chestnut.
That's Urban Chestnut. We have a similar beer to that kind of unfiltered lager style. Ours is called White Lager, and it's probably been around for 8-9 years now, but kind of classic Bavarian, lager, but then unfiltered, and a little bit higher ABV. But yeah, that
That's why I confuse them. It's the the unfiltered lager, the Biere de Gard, the Biere de Gard being unfiltered. Like all
yeah,
of, yeah, I just
yeah.
associate it with you.
And I'm pretty sure on the white lager label in smaller print it says like Zwickel style or something like that. It's always interesting because like a word like Zwickel, you always worry about like education gap with consumers and like, are they going to get this? If you just call it a unfiltered lager, I mean, that's not that sexy of a name, but at the same time, it gets, gets the information across. But it's been interesting to, as the St. Louis brewing community has grown and we've seen, we've seen the education of the consumers, kind of continue to rise. It's pretty cool how smart and well-rounded so many consumers are these days. I mean, craft beer obviously really took off in the 90s, and there's been evolutions and ebbs and flows and all this stuff, but in my own experience, seeing the consumer education level kind of rise with it has been really cool, because you never know what you're gonna get. Sometimes you've got people that they're going to nerd out so hard they might out nerd you, and you're just like, wow, like you really know your stuff. And then other times, like the other day, we've got our barrel aged imperial stout on tap right now, that we just did a small batch this year for pub release, packaged, bottled a small amount of it. And one of our bartenders was telling me, he was like, yeah, this guy ordered it. And then he was like, something's wrong with my beer. And he was like, oh, what? And, basically the dude didn't know what BA meant, So I was like, oh, yeah, sorry. There are still consumers out there that like, just BA doesn't mean anything to them. I was like, did he order a Ba Imperial Stout?
Right. Is he old enough to know the A Team and BA Baracus?
Yeah.
Or...
Yeah, but yeah, if you don't know that you're getting into a barrel aged beer and then that's what you taste, like that could be surprising in comparison to a 5.5, kind of or middle of the road stout experience.
There's wood in my beer. That BA Imperial Stout sounds like it would fit in my wet January, though. Is it over 10%?
It absolutely would. Do you happen to know Zach Leonard? He's our Indianapolis-based sales guy.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, he's kind of an old industry head, but me and Zach have a really good working relationship, and I try to make sure that I always stash back, 6 barrels of like this and that for him to sprinkle around at his, events and specialty tapping stuff. So,
so I need to find Zach and meet him.
Yeah. And I've got some 6 barrels laid back here for him to, as he finds spots to land those. But yeah, we're always, even though we're not distributing like Imperial Stout like we once did, like the 750s and stuff, we still try to find ways to get, small allotments of the draft of that, kind of sprinkled around into our distribution footprint too. So
I happen to know a place that loves to do tap takeovers. They have 20 taps. They love to do tap takeovers, and that is exactly the sort of thing that they like to put on there too.
Yeah. I think in the last year or so, I know he's gotten some triple, some quad in a few spots in Indianapolis. I want to say Imperial Stout, a few of the sours, but yeah, it's just kind of always, I used to be part of the Indiana Brewers Guild, so like I'm, familiar with maybe not the more recently open places in Indianapolis, but some of the more old school spots and stuff.
Well, you still remember Bruges?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We've got Winterfest coming up, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
I've
looking
been to
forward to that.
Winterfest. Yeah. I've been to Winterfest numerous times, Summerfest. Yeah. And lot of fond, fuzzy memories of
Yes.
of those events.
We were talking about beer styles before. Is there one that you want to bring back, or something that you enjoy brewing or haven't brewed in a while and just want to revisit?
Honestly, as time has gone on, in my brewing career, and also just, in my own personal enjoyment of beer, I've really been trending kind of down in ABV, but wanting to maintain, really good flavor, really good aromatic pop in my stuff. Really the last few years, kind of the evolution of the modern Pilsner and the modern lager and those kind of beers, and kind of how we're even like utilizing lager yeast in ways that, we previously didn't. Those are kind of the things that are really piquing my interest these days. In the grand scheme of things too, it's like, as a brewer, I am fully over the haze craze. I have this joke that, when craft beer started, it was in this rejection to, there was basically like one style being made by, all the big breweries, and like craft beer really grew out, expanded, and so many styles and all these different things. And then all of a sudden Hazy IPAs came back around, and then we were all making basically the same tasting, smelling, looking stuff. And I was like, what happened? Like, so I have been trying to like, we have obviously adapted that. We have Just a Bit Hazy. It's been one of our better selling year-round beers. And at the same time, it's like, it's there, it exists. I'm happy it exists. I'm happy that people love Hazy IPAs, but me personally, I have moved on. And I like clear hoppy beers. I like sessionable things, lower ABV stuff. And, it's like, I still want to, not just drink one or two beers, especially on the weekends. Like, I want to have a few. And as we all know, as we age, our consumption levels are, going to evolve and change. So for me, yeah, it's seasonal, but at the end of the day, it's like, if I really had to pick, somewhere in between kind of hoppy pilsners and clear, lower ABV IPA, pale ales, extra pale ale kind of things, like anymore. That's what I'm reaching for, But then again, in the wintertime, coffee stout season, I love coffee stout. But coffee stout, usually after like one or two, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm ready to pivot to something else.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the nature of craft beer. It's about the variety and exploring and tasting different things and new things, or familiar things. And the joy that, each of those different things can bring,
I'm always trying to get Saison to come back, or to get more of it.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more Belgian styles. That's just my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah.
Waiting for those, because all the lagers and the pilsners are starting to come back. So I'm waiting patiently for those
That
to
should
get
be next
popular
in the
again.
cycle.
Right?
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, and I mean, even within the last decade or so, we've had a few saisons that were in kind of seasonal distribution spots. We had like a tropical saison that also had passion fruit at one point. We had kind of a dry hopped farmhouse ale that saw some distribution. I think that was in a few variety packs. But yeah, those are always tricky. You know, from a production brewing standpoint, there were times where we're managing 6, 7 yeast strains, you know, and keeping those all happy. And, you know, we've got the Kolsch yeast, we've got American ale, we've got English ale, we've got the German lager, you know, and, you know, over time trying to simplify things and, you know, logistically make things make better sense. Yeah, it was kind of tricky. So nowadays, if we do brew some of the Belgians, we'll prop up the yeast over at Bottle Works, then bring it over here. Like earlier last year, we did a Taffel beer, you know, like a classic table beer, a little 3.5%. Basically, we brewed that to grow the yeast up from the prop, you know, so then we could pitch that into triple, and then we could pitch that into quad, you know. So it's like there's always those styles always, you know, they resonate, they have their fan base, and we love producing those. But at a certain point, distributing those kind of didn't make as much sense. So we kind of had to pull them back just to more like pub stuff. But at the end of the day, I think we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 different yeast strains banked in our cryo freezer. And occasionally we'll bring back a yeast strain that we haven't worked with in a while. But for the most part nowadays, it's, you know, the focus is really on the 2 ale yeast, the German lager, and the Kolsch yeast, just to kind of keep those happy and, you know, keep Bottle Works moving.
It looked like there was a story behind the Kolsch yeast.
Yes. Yeah. So Schlafly beer takes its name from our co-founder, Tom Schlafly, because our other co-founder was Dan Kottman, and they decided Schlafly beer sounded better than Kottman beer, you know, and so that was, you know, opened in 91. In 97, Tom Schlafly married his wife, Ulrika, who is a native of Cologne, Germany. And the mayor of Cologne, as a gift to them for their wedding, sent a keg of Kolsch yeast from the Goffel brewery in Cologne there. And something happened in the first year, and they messed up the yeast, and they had to get a second keg of yeast sent from Goffel. And originally it was a seasonal. It was called Summer Kolsch, and then it eventually went year round. But we are still that second keg of Kolsch yeast is what we still have going to this day. You know, we've propagated it. You know, we've got it in our deep freeze. We grow it up after about every 10 batches or so. We'll grow up a new prop and all that fun stuff. But yeah, it was kind of originally their wedding beer that then grew to a summer seasonal that then grew to the point that it's now in our year round. And yeah, it's interesting because kind of back to that, like, consumer education, you know, collective level rising. Kolsch is one of our top growing brands in some of the distribution footprint, which is awesome. You know, that, like, you know, if you just see it in a glass, you're like, yeah, that's a gold beer. Like, sweet. You know, it's got a little bit of character, a little bit of malt, a little bit of hop note. But it's very approachable, you know. But the name, you know, I think, you know, early on, there was an education gap between, like, what is a Kolsch, and nowadays, you know, people more readily know that, and yeah, we've seen great success with that, especially on, like, the East Coast, like DC, Baltimore, you know, up New Jersey, New York, like all those, you know, kind of East Coast places. It was like Kolsch is like one of our better performing distribution beers nowadays, which is really cool to see, that such a classic style that really is specific to that region, to that city, has now grown enough that, the average beer consumer, at least here in St. Louis, they're like, yeah, I'll have a Kolsch, but if you hear Tom Schlafly pronounce Kolsch, it's like a very physical pronunciation, and I won't try to do that because my wife is not from Cologne. But yeah, it's just like I'm like it's Kolsch,
and it's a Midwest one. It's a
yeah.
It's pronounced different.
But yeah, it's that's a great story, and it's just cool that it's like it's stuck around. It's because I could have seen, even before I came into the company, I could have seen them like keeping that a seasonal thing or keeping that a kind of a pub thing. But the fact that it's gone into distribution and stayed there and done as well as it has is kind of testament to Schlafly beer as a whole, where the idea of this company was founded on producing classic European styles that were not readily available here in the States. That's where it started, and that's why our flagship pale ale is an English pale ale. Oatmeal stout is a classic kind of English style. Really until you get more into like the dry hopped APA and some of the, more hop forward things that came after that. This company was kind of very steadfastly in the classic European styles for probably the first 15 years that it existed. I remember when I first joined, we were working towards American IPA becoming a distribution beer, and now, American IPA is looked at as like a classic, kind of old school IPA, but yeah, and nowadays we're always looking forward, trying to figure out what's next, and a lot of what I do is trying to figure out what's next, kind of gauging where we should hedge our bets, what hops are going to be the next new hops. I try to uphold and maintain the history and the past of the company, and also look to the future and innovate and figure out, what's next and what can make sense for us in our market here, and then also in the wider market too. So it's a balance, as most things are.
True. I heard pickle beers are the next big thing.
Yeah. I love pickles. I love pickled things. Again, it's like those kind of things. We had a pickle fest last summer where we, kind of dosed some kegs of Hellas with some like pickle brine and stuff. And that was fun. But at the same time, I'm like, we're not going to like produce this and ship this to our entire distribution footprint. I think there's better beer styles that will probably perform a little bit better. But we still have to acknowledge that these niche, things are happening. And, we try to say that we're not trend followers, but we try to be, tip of the spear, kind of thing.
Makes sense.
And kind of back to the hazy IPAs. It's like, we see a lot of our neighbor breweries here in St. Louis still really leaning into that, and we're trying to lean into another direction. And it's like in a land of 1,000 hazy IPAs, why be the 1,001? Consumers are going to change. They're going to ebb and flow their tastes. Something that was super hot, it's not going to completely go away. Well, I say that, some things have completely gone away. Like we don't see Brute IPA anymore. The white IPAs, black IPAs tried to kind of have a little bit of a,
I feel like they're sticking around.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I was surprised to see Wookie Jack, back into like distribution, as far as like a black IPA kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it's trying to be two steps ahead of what's next before everybody else even knows what's next, kind of thing. And that's always the trick, is trying to have that crystal ball of, what's going to resonate and what's actually going to move the meter and sell, so.
I think it's ice cream beers.
Yeah, I used to joke with everybody, it was like the dessert kind of pastry stout craze. I was like, what's going to be next is sandwich stouts. I was like, savory stouts are going to be huge, and we actually kind of jokingly incorporated some of those into our Stout and Oyster Festival over the years, like a horseradish stout or a Tabasco stout, these things that were jokes. And then we like actually put it together on a very small scale, and then, run it through a festival. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, this is great. And it works with the food thing. And on paper, it's like, this doesn't make sense, but then you taste it and you're like, yeah. So it's like pickle beers, on paper, I can see, sours and salty things and all those different components. Like those can work together when done well. I just don't see those as like, a bigger kind of distribution footprint kind of beer. But kudos to those that can thread that needle and make that work. But yeah.
You said Stout and Oyster Festival, which I need to dial in on because St. Louis is not near an ocean.
Yep. Yeah. So that one has a lot of history with the company. And some of that history was really founded on the fact that our founding brewer, Stephen Hale, at one point was, he lived on the Maine coast and worked on some various seafood boats and all this stuff. And like, it kind of, to kind of circle back to the tap room and downtown West and creating events to bring people to the tap room in kind of the off season. Stout and Oyster was really one of those events that, in the cooler months, I've been told that you should only eat oysters raw in the months with an R,
Right.
Here in the Midwest. So what started kind of as like a small festival of just, we fly in, how many of our oysters and, it's just upstairs here in the event space, eventually grew and grew and grew to the point that it was way bigger for its britches than we could even really maintain and run. And then, as we all lived it and know it, 2020 happened, and events like that suddenly became a lot more difficult for us to kind of navigate and fund, because at its height, I mean, we were flying in shuckers from both coasts. We brought in like 80,000 oysters. We went through all of those in like a day and a half. I mean, it was madness. And nowadays we're trying to figure out how to kind of configure that festival into our current, logistics. It's been tricky. We kind of brought it back over at Bottle Works. And then, that's one of those events where there's a lot of initial upfront kind of investment that, eventually gets paid off. But at the same time, when staring at, spreadsheets and numbers and stuff, and it's like, this is really expensive upfront, we've been trying to find, some partners to work with to kind of help co-sponsor that. And, so it's unfortunately, it was one of those where, for better or for worse, it became so popular and so successful that we, created a monster, so to speak, that then kind of became too big for us to, it was like, the horse outgrew its, pin or whatever kind of thing. So yeah, we've taken a pause on that the last year and a half, 2 years, and we're kind of working towards trying to figure out how to make that happen again in a way that will satisfy our customer base and also ourselves, and also not be this massive undertaking. Because I mean, at the height of it, the company was bigger than it is currently. Things have kind of ebbed and flowed in the last 5 years, and throwing events on that scale is not our strong suit that it was at one point. Kind of so. But yeah, horseradish stout with a fresh oyster. It's amazing what can actually work sometimes. But again, by itself, you drink like a pint of horseradish stout, you're like, okay, like that's a lot,
I always say with the pickle beers that I like it in sample size.
Exactly, yeah, there's a lot of things, and whenever we're like testing stuff out on our pilot work system, we're sampling things out. I always try to remind our staff and people we're sampling with. It's like, it's one thing that first sip. Now imagine that 20th sip as you're finishing the glass, or you're opening that second can or that second bottle. Like, those are the flavors that we need to keep in mind more than just that initial like wow, factor kind of thing. The wow factor is important, but the consistency and the longevity and wanting to actually have more than just a couple of ounces is the key, at least for me on a lot of the projects. So.
Jared, we are at an hour. We're past an hour. So we're going to go ahead and start wrapping it up. And we usually ask a fun question that may or may not be beer related, similar to the City Museum, may or may not be beer related.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and ask you, Cardinals, St. Louis or Louisville?
Oh, man, I'm going to get in trouble here. So funny enough, my last name, Williamson, we have roots in Brown County, Indiana that go back over 200 years. So I grew up a Hoosier. And the Cardinals were kind of like my second team growing up because I grew up, in the Louisville area. But I was born and raised on Indiana University sports, which their football team is still hard to wrap my head around that they're actually like good. But yeah, I mean, being a St. Louisan now for 14 and a half years, it's kind of easy right now because the Cardinals are not good and they haven't been good for a few years. And most people are kind of annoyed with, their ownership. So you put me on the spot. I'm like, I'd still say Louisville, go Cards.
It's funny because that will work in so many cities too.
Yeah. Yeah. But,
I didn't understand that question at all. Just to be honest. So one of the things that I love most about the beer community is that that we are always willing to help out the people around us. So if I were to visit St. Louis, what is something around your tap room or Bottle Works, whichever one? If I was at one of your locations, is there somewhere near there that you think I should check out?
Absolutely. I'm a company guy, but I'm also a community guy. And I love our St. Louis brewing community. Like I said earlier, Blue Jay is just a couple of blocks from us. Jason, their head brewer, they're a lager focused brewery. And they've been just knocking it out of the park, doing great stuff. Beyond that, Civil Life is one of our best breweries here in town. You know, they're kind of like us. They make a lot of classic styles, but they just do everything very well. And they've got a great patio, great for hanging out, great for taking dogs, kids. You know, in Maplewood, our close by brewery buddies, our side project, who have grown to, you know, world renowned, deservedly so. But they've got a fun little campus. They've got their original brewery. Then they've got the side project cellar, which is, you know, just right around the corner. And then they've got their pizza spot, which is across from the brewery. So it's like they've kind of got 3 little satellite locations, all within walking distance of Bottle Works. And there's all kinds of, you know, restaurants and shops kind of in between those 2 spots in Maplewood. And yeah, you can spend a day, you know, between their locations and Maplewood and us. You know, you get beyond that. I mean, Perennial has been making really solid beers. Narrow Gauge up north, it's a smaller brewery, but Jeff Hardesty, their head brewer owner, Jeff does great stuff.
They have some sort of taproom partnership here in Indianapolis.
Yes, I think I'd seen something about that. It's like an arcade. It's like an arcade plot spot or something.
The one I'm thinking of, I hope it's the same one. I'm pretty sure it is up by Goose the Market, and it used to be the Tap. I think was the bar that was just north of there that doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's I don't know, north of downtown.
Yeah, because
it does have an arcade in the basement.
Yeah, I'd seen something about some like narrow gauge stuff in Indianapolis and whatnot. But yeah, you know, I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, you know, Four Hands is very well known, producing a lot of solid stuff. You know, you can't. I mean, Urban Chestnut, like we said earlier. You know. Dan Kottman, our one co-founder, used to jokingly say, you know, we don't have the mountains and we don't have the ocean, but in St. Louis, we've got really good beer, you know, and that's true, you know, and I'm like, well, we're in the Riverlands. We've got really good water, and that's very important for making really good beer.
True story.
Yeah. We're here at the confluence, you know, of a couple of major rivers, and but yeah, it's a very like, you know, the Madison Homebrewers and Taster Guild, the people that put on Great Taste in the Midwest, they'll bring down busloads of people, you know, every couple of years, and, you know, hit up all the different breweries around town. And I think the last time they came down, they were here for like 3 days because of all the different breweries they wanted to hit, you know, and stuff like that. But yeah, St. Louis, the beer community, the beer culture here, you know, it's really grown, and there is a whole lot of community, you know, within that. In the early days of, you know, the Perennials and the Four Hands and the Civil Lives and the side project, like there are more times than most people know about publicly that, you know, questions were asked and things, you know, Schlafly Beer was able to kind of help out, and, you know, in quietly in ways that, you know, nobody's ever going to like promote and publicize. But, you know, at the end of the day, are they competition? Sure. But at the same time, like, you know, I don't want just, you know, 8, you know, giant breweries making the same style for the country. We need all these different breweries making all these different things in all these different neighborhoods. Like that is what craft beer is about. It is about building community, supporting community, and creating great flavors and great experiences and great memories, you know. So that's what beer is for me.
I think that's a great note to go out on.
I think so too.
So, Jared, thank you once again for your time. It has been absolutely wonderful to talk to you. I am going to go. I guess, Wendy, do you have anything upcoming that we need to mention?
Not this week.
Okay, Jared, do you have anything upcoming that you want to mention? The stouts are out.
Well, yeah, stouts are out. And then one stout we didn't talk about, our Irish Extra Stout. It's in our limited time only series, so it doesn't see as broad of distribution. But if you're looking for kind of that, 8% export strength stout, that's out in most of our distribution network right now. And then as far as Schlafly stuff coming up, our annual Burns Night event is coming up later this month. We actually just racked Scotch Ale into Bright Tank today. Ahead of that, we always have a big Burns Night event here at the tap room. There's bagpipes, there's Scotch eggs, there's Scotch Ale. Tom Schlafly always reads his annual poem that he writes, and he still gets up on the bar, for better or for worse, at his age to deliver this. We built a special little staircase for him to help him get up on the bar, and then there's spotters. But yeah, Birds Night is kind of one of our classic. We've been celebrating it ever since the beginning, and that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So if you're in the neighborhood and you like malty Scotch beers and Scotch eggs and poetry and bagpipes, it's a vibe. It's a really cool experience. But yeah,
Excellent. I don't have anything coming up as far as the show goes. We are working on guests. We have a lot of irons in the fire still, so that will come out as we can announce it. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the show like we close every show and say, whatever you think of your beer, we think it's better on draft.
Cheers.
Cheers.